Bonjour à tous. Après les femmes.
Well, good afternoon. After these wonderful, incredible, courageous women we've seen on screen, we're going to continue with the debate with the three extraordinary women who are working day in, day out, so that justice becomes the standard, and you each fight in your own different way. And together, we're going to try and see how. Again, the position women should take in the peace process. Clemenceau used to say, war is something too serious to be left exclusively in the hands of the military. And today we could be saying, peace is so too serious and too precious for being left exclusively into the hands of men. I mean, that's what Resolution 1325 of the United Nations requests. That dates back to 2000. And we're scared of being too essentialist, which means, making a sort of caricature and having, women on the one hand fighting for peace and the men on the other hand, who are bloodthirsty fighters. But can we still say that in your eyes there are special specificities in the approach to peace and specific characteristics that are found only in women? That's my first question. And I was going to forget to introduce you. And so it's a great honor to have with us Fatou Bensouda. She's a general attorney of the CCI at The Hague, and since 2012. But you've been working for many, many years with the International Criminal Court since 2004 as a deputy general prosecutor. Okay. So, Bineta Diop, Special Envoy of the Commission of African Union for Women, also president and founder of an NGO called, African Women for Solidarity, and we will, of course, be talking about this organization. And Alejandra, Ancheita, no need to introduce her to you because we've just seen a film showing us very clearly all about your activities. So, to all three of you, this question: so, do women really have a different and specific approach to questions that have to do with peace? So we're going to start with Fatou Bensouda.
I love this film, and I love it because I believe it has depicted the woman and what a woman is capable of doing. The true character of a woman is what we saw today in this movie. The woman in the movie we have seen, as many women will do, they have shown planning, the ability to plan. They have shown strategy. They have shown resilience. They've shown courage. They have shown leadership. And I think all of this, I believe, is embodied in the woman and what women can do. They have shown focus, because what they wanted was peace, and they insisted on peace to the very end until peace was achieved. I think it is very specific to a woman. I'm not speaking because I'm a woman, but I believe this strongly, that it is very specific to a woman to want something and to go for it. To get it, to show that you can truly plan for it and to be able to achieve results in the end. It has also demonstrated that women can actually contribute to pacify conflicts, because that is exactly what they have demonstrated again. You could see if you compare the men with the guns, the fighting, and you see the women insisting, continuing to insist that we're tired of running, we want peace. And they focused on that and achieved it in the end. Another thing that I believe what this movie has also taught us is you can look at the men who were at the table, the negotiating table. You could hardly find a woman. It was all led by men. And I think that the time has come for that to stop. Really. We have seen over time that it's really women and children who bear the brunt of these atrocities. They suffer more. You could see it, and this is just one conflict. But all the conflicts around the world, those who suffer most are the women and children. And yet, when you say you want to negotiate for peace, the men are there looking for power sharing, who gets what, and those who suffer are not brought to the table. This is wrong. Because we have demonstrated as women that there is much that we can contribute at the negotiating table. And even though these women were not there at the table, they were outside, but the results that were achieved was through them and by them.
Courage et persévérance.
Courage and perseverance. I mean, the women we saw on screen, and you described this as specific characteristics of women. So, Bineta Diop, I'm sure you agree with that. But do you see any other specifically feminine characteristics in the approach to peace?
Lima told us recently, the woman in the film told us recently that we were tired.
That we can make it. It's our right to be there. It's our right. It's a right for women to participate. But we have something to bring. Donc, pour elles,
so for them, it's very important. But because it's their right, but a woman brings something, as Mrs. Bensouda said. A woman brings something while the men were trying to share the different ministries and sharing power. The women were just saying we want peace, and beyond peace, the strategy they adopted was the base, the basics of this crisis and the deep roots of this, what we see in Africa, the money, sharing of resources, the sharing of power, and the women, they just want one thing. We want to go back home with a peaceful environment, but also watch and observe what is being done with our resources. Liberia is a rich country. Since 1997, I am in Liberia with my organization, African Women and Solidarity. And one thing which hasn't been said, it's the first time in the history of the world a woman signed the peace agreement. She was shown, Teresa Lee-Shellman, she was awarded of the United Nations of Human Rights Prize. And while Lima was outside exerting pressure, there was another group, Manu River Peace Work. She signed the peace agreement of Monrovia. So you had the women of the sub-region, because Charles Taylor, as it has been said, has been denounced for the conflict in Sierra Leone, not only in Liberia. And the women from Sierra Leone and Guinea in the sub-region have supported the women in the conflicts, the Lima Boy and the women from Liberia. So this work has been done by the women to bring some security. They call a security with human dimension. The fact that they are fighting for land, for the livelihood of the populations. And when you see what happened in Liberia, it was looting by a group of men. We will not say that it's about all men, because we have to make the difference, because we need those men, some men, as the mediators, for instance. So you have to see who is the mediator and who exerts the pressures. And I always say in United Nations, you have to have mediators, women and men, able to understand what a woman can bring at a negotiation table. You have to open the door to the women so that they can be present. A woman like Mary Robinson, I'm going to talk about her, because Florence Difelix has mentioned the fact that Mary, when she was mediator for the Great Lake region, she said, I cannot only have a result if the women are also committed. because in these regions of the Great Lake, the environment in countries like Rwanda, DCR, Congo, and so on, she said it's the women who are important. She created this women platform and which denounces what is happening in the East with the rapes and so on. And so different foundations are supporting that. So you should have good mediators, women and men. And Mary Robinson was the first who was appointed by the United Nations Special Envoy. So what I can say, very modestly, I was also the first, and still the first African woman who is also Special Envoy for the African Union for these issues of women and security. I'll tell about my assignments and my trips in South Sudan in November. I recently went to Nigeria, Boko Haram, and I'm going to tell you what the girls and the women are saying and the impact of these wars on these people. And women can make the difference, and they can also help rebuild and take part to this rebuilding. I think that the film is very clear about that.
So, of course, we're going to be talking about women who are very often victims of conflicts. But before that, Alejandra and Ancheita, I'd like to hear you tell us about these woman-specific approach of peace. In your work, as we saw described, we realize that you're able to be very close, to really represent civil society. That is very basic.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just wanted to say that I'm so glad that I am sharing this panel with these incredible women, and I just wanted to honor you for the work that you have in them for so many years. And well, I just wanted to also address the question saying that the violence that most of the women are living on the world, it is based principally in a system where still the patriarchy and the sexism is present. And that system, it is also based in the power of domination. And in that regards, women are deciding to fight against violence, different kinds of violence. You can see the wonderful example on the movie, but also other examples around the world of women being organized, fighting not just only for peace, but also for democracy, also for equality, for a freedom, for a life free of violence. And even in the movie, of course, the main goal was achieving peace, but they knew that was not the only goal. They knew that that was just the beginning for the real possibilities to build a new democracy. And what does that mean for women? The right to participation, the right to protest, the right to also say what they want for the peace and for the democracy in their own country. And I think they were pretty aware, for example, about the other actors, the transnational corporations on Liberia that were part of the violence, and even the need of jobs for men and women. And I think that was an important point of view that the film was also showing from the perspective of women. And for us, I think the characteristic approach for women regarding peace is that not only in Liberia, but also in Mexico, in Africa, in Latin America, and I think in each country, women are the most affected for violence, for the different types of violence, not only the violence which is pretty specific during the war, but for example, the economic violence that we are suffering. We are still fighting for the right to go to the school. The girls that were abducted by Boko Haram, they were just trying to go to the school, the primary school or the secondary school. And that is happening also in Mexico and Latin America. We have in Mexico, we don't have this kind of conflict of a pretty clear war, but we are, for example, facing a pretty deep crisis of human rights. And we have 150,000 of people that was killed for the war against the organized crime. And we have around of 2006 people that is disappeared since 2006 until now, and the government and the other actors are not really paying attention. And in this environment, women are the most affected, principally because it is being targeted, for example, not only for the killings and the forced disappearance, but on the daily basis with sexual violence. And that is something that at least the Mexican government is trying to just keep quiet, and it is not on the radar of the international community. So I think we need to readdress the violence and the perspective of women of violence, not in a feminine category. I think women are fighting for the right to have a life free of violence, but also for the right of have a dignified life, and for the democracies around the world. And they are also fighting not only for women, but also for men and women. And I think that is another important element that the movie was showing.
So women often are not involved in the conflict, so it gives them an even more important role when the peace process is being worked out, because they don't have their hands covered in blood. So do you think they have a legitimacy due to the position they have traditionally? So I don't know if anyone wants to take that question.
I think that is an important issue to highlight. The fact that in most of these conflicts, we do not see women picking up arms and joining in the killings. And this, as you have said, does give them the legitimacy also to be able to, once again, come to the table. They need to be there to be able to speak about peace and to see how they can address issues that are causing the root causes of the conflict, or solutions that can make the conflict go away. I believe an important aspect that sometimes we also maybe tend to overlook is the issue of accountability. Accountability for these crimes. And we have seen that for a long time, people who commit these crimes have either enjoyed amnesties, or they've enjoyed some form of offering for them golden exile to go away, and not really hold them to account. People who perpetrate these crimes, who make them happen, without whom the crimes would not have happened, should be held to account. I believe this will act as a deterrent to others who are thinking of or are actually committing these crimes. We have seen Charles Taylor. Charles Taylor was indicted by the Special Court of Sierra Leone and has been on trial. He has been sentenced, as most of us know, to 50 years imprisonment by the court. He just lost the appeal, and he's serving his sentence now. I think this is sending a very strong message that those who perpetrate these crimes will be held accountable for the crimes that they have committed. If we want to have peace in our societies, we must have justice as well. It's absolutely, absolutely important. And just speaking to, you mentioned in your intervention about women being the ones who are most affected, women and children. I mean, this is a fact. It's not something that is being made up. And on my part, as prosecutor of the ICC, I have always felt that this is an area that I have to give priority in my work. And the first thing I wanted to put in place was a policy on sexual and gender-based crimes. I was able to launch that policy last year. With the policy, I am hoping that it will give clarity that for us who are investigating and prosecuting these crimes, we will integrate this kind of crimes in the work, in every aspect of our work, to ensure that we investigate it properly and that we are able to prosecute it properly, to provide training to my staff, to give clarity to people that this is how the Office of the Prosecutor is handling these crimes that refuse to go away. We have seen in every conflict almost, these crimes take place. We are now prosecuting, for instance, Jean-Pierre Bemba within the context of a case in the Central African Republic. Jean-Pierre, that case is one of the cases that the incidents of sexual and gender-based crimes are outnumbered the incidents of killings. So you can imagine that it's like, it's the order of the day. It is inevitable. It should happen. And people should look at it that way. But we are saying no. It is not inevitable. People plan for this to happen. And they commit it on innocent women and children, boys and girls alike. And the message that we're sending is that even as a commander, you have a responsibility to ensure that the troops that you command don't go into the field and commit these crimes. You are in a position to order them to stop, or you are in a position to punish those who have committed these crimes. If you do not do it, this is why we are holding Mr. Jean-Pierre Bemba liable and charge him before the court. The case is still on. The judges are waiting. We are waiting for the judges to give the judgment, I think, in the coming months. But at least it is a signal that even as commanders, you have responsibility for these crimes not to take place.
Bineta Diop, oui.
Ça, c'est vraiment l'exemple.
This is really the example. When you put the leader, when you ask a question, is can the woman make a difference? A leader such as that woman, taking the leadership of the ICC, incredible what she's been able to do, setting up the necessary structures and also the laws that are needed in order to protect women. So you put women and sometimes men. I mean, we shouldn't exclude men, but the people who are sensitive to the issue, and that is the type of leadership we're after. So back to your question, and I'm going to add to it. So the question, which is to say, is it because they are just victims that we have to invite them around the negotiating table? I think that, first of all, I think we have to look at the mechanism of governance in these countries that are in conflict. I mean, you see the imbalance in terms of participation between men and women. I mean, the discrimination versus women. This is, the first indicator that is available. So if you want to, rebalance representation within a society, and if you don't want to have any more wars, if you want to stop the violence, you should ensure, and that's what Liberia did, by putting, the first women head of state in Africa, Madame Ellen Diop, but also by enacting laws that can protect women, and that's the case in Rwanda. In fact, it's actually by reversing the steam so that those who didn't participate and who did not have a right to speak out can come and reinforce the mechanism of governance through elections and so on. But we need to enact those laws that will protect these people who actually were forgotten. Back to what Mrs. Bensouda said regarding impunity. So recently I was a member of an investigation committee for South Sudan, and our report is not yet published. But one thing I can say is that, the first person who talk in the camps, and the Dinkas they are in the United Nations camps under shelter, because otherwise it would have been a genocide. And so, they are actually living in the United Nations camps so as to avoid another Rwanda. So the first who speak out of Nuer and Dinka to sit down. Again, the men are still on either side. It's the women, in churches, even in the camps, they started talking about reconciliation. But what they say, in addition, is that we can't just have reconciliation if there's no justice, and we have to hold accountable those who committed the atrocities at the highest possible level of leadership, but also by looking at what happened at the very bottom. And as they did in Rwanda, to set up local courts. I mean, you can't have can't take a whole nation to court, but to have the gacaca. These are traditional local courts. Those who, like Lema said, those who perpetrated acts of violence, but who were ordered by leaders such as Taylor, that we can actually take them to traditional courts so that they will actually pay at the end. But if we don't stop the cycle of violence, that is what got us to where we are. You're simply you're actually perpetrating and perpetrating these violences. So in these traditional courts, women are represented. Yes, because I mean, look at the case of Rwanda. The gacaca are actually headed by women, because most of the time, men, they're the ones who've actually perpetrated these crimes, and the women are actually listening to them, hearing them, but also by giving sentences. Some of them would be to spend part of their life to contribute to the development of society, to look after the young people, and to do certain types of work they weren't used to doing it. So it's the women who actually are the head of these courts and who are actually highlighting who are deciding on the sentences.
The question of impunity in Mexico, how does it happen? One knows that you have feminicides systematically killing women. Can you explain us how the situation is? And those people committing those crimes, do they have chances being indicted or made accountable?
Yeah, that is a very interesting question, principally because part of the crisis of violations of human rights that right now we are facing in Mexico, it is because of this cycle of corruption and impunity. And I think those are two elements that we have to always underline in this kind of cycles of violence, because we have several institutions that are in charge of making accountable people when they are committing these kind of crimes. But we have these institutions that are corrupted in most of the cases in Mexico, and that also brings impunity for the cases that are being denounced. And as you already mentioned it, we have in Mexico this pretty grave phenomenon, which is the feminicide, and it is legally defined like one of the most grave ways of violence against women. And in Mexico, we have right now per day 6 feminicides. It is the statistics that we have, and it is not improving. And on the other hand, when women, victims, or human rights defenders that are also working with communities and victims of violence denounce these kind of crimes or other kind of violations of human rights, we have the 98.5% of impunity of all the denounces that we are doing. And on the other hand, you also have the 66% of people that is organizing communities and also demanding justice are women in Mexico right now. So you can see that in Mexico the participation of women asking for justice and better mechanisms of accountability, it is pretty high, but at the same time, the violence for women, especially women human rights defenders, it is also becoming more and more dangerous.
Je voulais juste.
So I just wanted to share with you about these phenomena that are totally new in our country, and I'm talking about the Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab. So recently, in fact in December last, I traveled to the northern part of Nigeria to meet with the girls of Subok that were able to escape. And they escaped from the hands of Boko Haram, and the mothers who were waiting for the 200 and so girls who've disappeared. So there was a dialogue, and one of the girls said to me, they came to our school, and they took us away. I was raped. I was able to escape. You know, it was a miracle, but I was able to get out. But again, I was denied my right to continue going to school. And she met with Malala, and she said she gave me reason to hope to continue my studies, and I will do all that's all that's possible to continue. The fact that in the morning I get up and my whole body has been soiled, but my wish is to make sure I can continue with my education. This is one of the Chibok girls, and the mother went on to say to me, one of the mothers, said, you know, I have other children, and in the morning I wake up and I have to look after my other children, but, you know, I think about my daughter, what's become of her, where is she? So, you know, from morning to evening, I'm thinking of, you know, what these girls are going through in the hands of Al-Shabaab. What is it we can do about it? I went in November. Once again, I went to Somalia in the tanks in order to meet the Somali women. And the same thing had happened to her. They were totally taken aback and destabilized by this phenomenon. What Lima said in the film, I mean, this film gives us a lot of information. The fact that, you know, the issues relating to women in these regions, you know, we shouldn't neglect them. The fact that she was able to bring together women, whether they be Muslim or Christian, simply because the target is the women. And the target, it's the young girl that's being targeted. It's the emancipation of these very women that is being targeted by denying them the fundamentals such as education or even their right to health. And I think, you know, the fight we need to lead is through the dialogue with these women, and it is happening. We must ensure that the women, whether they're Christian in Nigeria or Muslim, these women should be able to get together to say, no, we don't want this. It has nothing to do with religion. And once again, it's all about sharing power. As we know full well, Nigeria has a lot of resources, a lot of oil. And as we were able to see it, it's these phenomena, once again, by using the women's body. And I think these new phenomena, we need to analyze them very, very carefully. But, you know, considering what we already know, women will always be used as a weapon of war, her body, that is, and that is exactly what is happening in those countries.
Resolution which was signed in year 2002, the 225, was also dealt also with prevention of conflicts and of course so that you have a rule of law. What are the other ways, for instance, education of women so that they can have important jobs in the society and have important positions? What would be the solution you would recommend?
Is justice. But of course, we all agree that all other areas also can contribute to giving the woman her rightful place in society. And of course, that includes education. Education is very important. Empowerment, whether it is economic empowerment or social empowerment, all of these are important for the woman to be able to have access to it. We have seen your movie about land. This is also something, it's part of economic empowerment, of course, but it is important. We have seen in many African societies that women cannot even have title to land according to the laws or according to the cultures. They cannot have title to land. And that means maybe one of the very important aspects that will make them get that empowerment that we need as women has been taken away. It is not there for the woman to be able to utilize it. So yes, justice is important, but we have to approach this in a very holistic manner. I always say that we have a role, and that's a piece that we bring to the table. But others, humanitarian, education, those negotiating for peace, reconstruction, rehabilitation, all of them also bring their piece to the table to see that this, for us to see that this can at least happen.
I think that Fatou is putting on top the issues of justice, education, equal opportunities to the people. One of the things is this year we have opportunities. You have said 1325. It's an opportunity because it's really give from the Security Council, who is implementing peace in the world, that women should be there. It's an opportunity we need to seize. And this year is the 15-year anniversary. 20 years of Beijing today that we are celebrating. We also know that in Africa, this is the year of women empowerment. So we need to put at the table the issues of land, as she has rightly said. If you don't have the title, you go to the bank, you don't have loan or credit. That's the issues. Agriculture is going to be the major driving force in Africa transformation. But when we look at it, that there is, in the growth of Africa, women are excluded. So we need to make sure that in these opportunities, we fought for the right for the women to have access, the access of those resources in Africa. Your other question is prevention. It's a very simple question because it doesn't cost a lot to prevent. But we see things happening, but we don't prevent. We wait until the conflict is there. We all go to want to cure. It's always too late, and the resources are bigger. My country, Senegal, you could see the women, the same way the Liberian women did. They did the same thing to prevent during the election, last election. With little money, the women came in white. They demonstrate. They said, not through the bullets, but through the ballots. Go to the ballots and make a difference. They did everything. They create a women's situation room to say that with the 3M, we mobilize, we make sure that we go and look into the ballot. We will be there to observe the election, monitoring, and also they were there to make sure that the young people and everybody who are included the political parties, they can make peace and not war. That stop the violence in the conflict. So it's better sometime to invest in prevention rather than waiting too long, like Liberia, before we go and say it is too long to bring peace in the country. So there are ample evidence and example that we can take to make sure that we implement them elsewhere.
I just want to mention a little bit about the preventive mandate of the court, because it's not only to try people, but we also try to take certain steps which we perhaps will help towards preventing a situation from arising. From time to time, I'm sure you will see me taking out a statement calling on parties. For instance, just recently, I did that with Nigeria because all indicators were that there would be violence in the upcoming elections. And as a prosecutor of the ICC, and Nigeria being part of the ICC, and the court also having jurisdiction to try crimes that take place in Nigeria, I made a declaration and called on the parties to respect because they have a peace accord that they had signed, committing to a peaceful violence. I said to respect that and also to remind them that the court is looking and that crimes, if they happen within the context of the elections, the ICC will have a right to step in and investigate, just to remind them, so that at least they have this in mind, and those who are thinking of organizing to commit crimes will actually think twice. So this is part of the preventive mandate of the ICC that we try from time to time to do it, especially where we expect that violence and crimes are likely to take place.
Well, I just wanted to say that, of course, I am also a lawyer, and I think the law is a very important tool for empowering women, principally demanding the rights. But it is obvious that it is not enough. We are improving laws protecting women against violence in different parts of the world, but we can see that the accountability, it is becoming, but it is still slow in comparison with the situation that women are facing in different countries. And in that regards, I think another way to also prevent violence against women and to ensure the participation of women in the different dialogues. I think the dialogues for peace are important, but even when we have this very powerful resolution from the Security Council, for example, the UN Women say that only since the 90s, where the resolution was declared, until 2011, only 9% of the people that is negotiating peace around the world are women. So you can see that even when we have these pretty powerful legal resolutions or laws around the world, still the participation of women, it is not inequality. And we need to address, as my fellow said before, in a holistic way. We need to address also the economic issues that are affecting the participation, the political participation of women, and that will be another important element in creating better conditions for improving the reality of women around the world.
Oui. Diop.
Je veux juste appuyer ce qu'elle.
I just to support what she just said. At first you have the laws, but then 1325 resolution. We would like to have less resolution but more action, more solutions, so that we really can implement what works. Because there are solutions. We have just seen it. It can be done. But now it's the moment to take action and not only to have new resolution, especially in our countries where the resolution disappear in the drawers. It's time for action. Before giving the floor to the audience, I just would like to ask three of us, what do you think of a new movement, women taking arms? We're talking about women engaging in diplomacy, in negotiation, and you see the Kurds, for instance, the women who are taking the arms and they stand up. How do you see that Is it a drawback, or is it rather something which is progress compared to the position of the women?
Personally, I don't see it as an advancement. I, in fact, find that it is very unfortunate because violence is never a solution. It can never be a solution to pick up arms and to start fighting because you want justice is not what is going to give you justice. It is not what is going to give you peace. And for me, it is really very, very sad that I see women are going towards that direction in this particular instance. I think it is, I quite agree that there is a lot of suffering being inflicted on them, on women. There is a lot of crimes being committed against women. I totally agree with that. But to retaliate in kind by picking up arms to also cause violence, I don't think this is the solution. It can never be a solution.
Je suis tout à fait d'accord avec pour arriver à.
I completely agree with Fatou that taking arms to defend yourself for those who attack the country, this is something which was surprising. But this happens more and more, that women have to be in our armies, but in the traditional armies, because as we know, you have armies to protect the countries, to protect the borders, and usually you have men in these armies, but you have in our armies, on the African level I know best, you have also women, and those armies are also committing crimes. And what we say, if you have to send armies, you see the armies coming from Chad, which are now in Nigeria, the army of Kenya, which is in Somalia. If you have to send those armies, you should have also this gender perspective, because you must raise their awareness. They have to be trained in humanitarian right, what the ICRC is doing, and I pay a tribute to President Somaruga, who is here in the room. And also, this gender issue has to be dealt with because we have to train the armies and to tell them to respect the civilians, but also the women. And to do so, it's not only a training, but you must have also women more and more in the armies so that you have a balanced system. But if you start a guerrilla, which are not something traditional, it's true. You have to defend your country. It is being done. But what we have to fight against is those wars in order not to have these child soldiers, as we have seen in the film, those young people who are being dragged. And you have to see everything with other eyes.
From my perspective, the situation of some women taking arms in order to defend themselves, it is not an advancement also. It is not. I think it is just another demonstration of the very bad situation that women are facing regarding violence. But it is pretty dangerous. Take again the arms as a power of domination, and it is always a pretty thin line in these kind of movements. If you are using the arms to protect yourself because you are facing a pretty high level of violence, or if you are taking the arms to also use the power of domination. It is pretty complicated, but for me it is just another example of the high violence that women are facing around the world.
Merci à toutes les trois d'avoir répondu à mes questions. Moi, je vais passer.
Thank you very much to the three of you for answering the question. I would like to now turn to the audience. Maybe we could hear one or two or three questions. I would like to have questions and not too many comments. So please, I would like to receive your real question. And hands are raising, and you will receive microphones. You have a question over there.
Ça vous va si on écoute 2, 3 questions?
Is it okay with you if we listen to 2 or 3 questions, then we give an answer? Thank you for giving me the floor. I am an African journalist from AfricanGuinea.com. It's an internet website, and I am attending this festival. I am also working for the festival. So I'm very proud today to see that you have those 2 sisters of Eastern Africa region I also come from. And this film showed that the women, when they want, they can. And we were all talking about accountability. I would just like to remind the crisis in Eastern Africa without being too long. Since 1989, with the rebellion of Charles Taylor, our region is completely destabilized. Any politician can just mobilize a militia because you have enough weapons, you have millions of weapons circulating across the country. And you know, there are people, presidents and states who help Taylor to go through their countries with this mercenary who have been trained in Eastern Africa. But they were also always admired as people bringing peace and so on. So if you take into account the power you have, the power of the women, you see Agatra Abiaribana, the example of Simone Baku, those women mobilized in a bad sense of the term, but you can also mobilize in a good direction. So go towards accountability and responsibility. I just would like to talk about the case of Guinea. We have to break with impunity. Now, presently in Guinea, during transition, women were raped during day, and children were killed. And this guy was elected afterwards, and it is still the formerly indicted persons became minister in his government. Some are in charge of the secret services. There is no political will to go toward justice. So you have the subsidiarity principle of national justice and international justice. So there is no political will to do something. So, Mrs. Bensouda, what do you think about that? So take note of the question. There another hand raising on the other side. Good afternoon. I just have a small comment. I am a Kurd from Kurdistan. But we have to say that the Salafists think that when they were killed by women, they don't go to paradise. And it's a strategical approach that women take the arms. So, for instance, in Switzerland, until 1871, 1980, she would lose her citizenship if she married a foreigner. My father was Chilean and mother was Swiss, and she had to ask back for her citizenship, and it's very humiliating for a woman. Presently, the women in Switzerland are fighting for wage equality, for salary equality. And it's a dumping. And we are in a society where the profit is important. You have a lot of bosses who are criminals. They prefer to pay lesser women to have more benefits and more profit. And you coming from Latin Africa, how do you see the fight of these European women for a real equality? Thank you.
So perhaps we're going to take these 2 questions before we take another block of questions. So you wanted to add something as regards to the case of Guinea?
On Guinea. As you know, Guinea, you rightly said, is a state party to the ICC. And there is, at the moment, preliminary examinations have been opened in Guinea. It's open because at the ICC, we do not replace national jurisdictions. We only complement it. And as we also come in to investigate and prosecute when the national system, which has its the primary responsibility to investigate and prosecute is not doing anything. That is when ICC will come in to complement. Now, under this preliminary examination phase that you rightly said, we have been on it since 2009, it's an attempt to also encourage Guinea itself to investigate, especially that awful incident that happened in 2009. It is to encourage them to do that. And what we are doing currently may not be too obvious because it's a quiet process in which we exchange letters. I send missions to Guinea, I meet with the authorities, and I ask for what they are doing. And they would provide me with this information. In fact, just recently, I had written, late last year, I wrote to the president saying that we're giving you this time, the authorities, to at least show us that substantively they are doing something. If they don't, I will not have any option but to come in as ICC prosecutor. And I know that I have received a lot of statements that have been taken to investigate, showing steps that substantive steps are being taken to investigate the incident. As long as they are taking these steps and we are observing that it is substantive, for us not to go in, we will not go in, but we will continue to encourage them to continue with the process. In fact, I'm even planning also to go to Guinea in the very near future to be able to exchange with the authorities and continue this process. As I said, it's a quiet process in which we continuously receive information and we are assessing that information to determine whether we take it over or we allow them to move forward.
Peut-être la deuxième question, par rapport au combat des femmes occidentales. Bineta Diop, j'aimerais bien que vous répondiez parce que vous avez un pied ici.
Question regarding the fight of Western women. You live in Geneva and you know these feminist fights and you know their demands on the field. So we are not in a situation of war. Yes, that's true. This is the difference maybe because when Europe was at war and when the women went to work while the men were fighting. This allowed the women to take part in the economy, and maybe the demands are completely different now. This feminist movement, is maybe weakening and doesn't have the same coherence and cohesion as before, because the political and civil rights are there. We have lots of laws in Europe to protect these rights, and when you fight for political structures, you have women being represented. Maybe the women do not mobilize anymore for the economical power. So it would be interesting to see what is happening. Why do the women not mobilize anymore? Sometimes the women have to have weapons, are like weapons without weapons. They must mobilize with men for a common cause, and they have to say, we want that. In the last book of Hillary Clinton on Glassily, where she says what the great corporation will have to do, putting highlighting the women important, because very often it's about big industries, big corporations, and economy is there. And if the women are not here, if the women are not in these processes, the balance will be disturbed. Be it in Europe or in Africa, because our fight in Africa is now a fight for our political and civil rights. We are there, but it's also you have also this issue, this economical issue, because both are very closely linked. We are in the same fight, but at different stages of our history. But when we gathered Africa and Asia during the Beijing conference, and you remember, we have won. We had this Beijing platform, which is the most representative platform for our problems, and we came together. I remember this tent of peace, Europe, Africa, Asia, Latin America. We just were united for the same fight, for the same ideology, and this is our strength. As soon as we are together, we can win. And maybe we must go on like that also in the fight in Europe. In Africa, we are ready to come to have a partnership and to be show solidarity for our sisters in Europe as we wait for you with your solidarity for the African women.
Alors, autre question.
Another question. Yes, Mr. Somaruga, who wishes to take the floor. So thank you. The first thing I'd like to say, I want to tell you my admirations for these great ladies that are before us, and not only because of what they've done and what they've said, but also, you know, they are examples to us. And for all of the international community, and they show us the way. So I have two short questions. The first is when we were talking about the need for justice in order to bring peace about. So shouldn't we go on to add another factor that I haven't heard anything about, which is forgiving? And if we want to add forgiveness, then I think the role of women to influence those who need to forgive is extremely important. And the second thing I wanted to say, in the field of prevention, don't you think that prevention begins almost in the cradle, and that the mother plays a very important part, and in order to bring up her children, by making them understand that we can't accept a world of violence. We all have a violent reaction within ourselves. I mean, there is violence within ourselves, but we have to contain it from the very first days of life. Thank you. So someone who had their hand very high up, and as there are many hands up and we don't have much time left, so there's one hand. Microphone. We'll take one last question quickly. Yes, at the back of the room. Yes, thank you. So, my name is Khadija Toure. I am from Chad, a former member of parliament, and I was an activist since 1976 in France, in Chad, to be able to, actually to make a dream come true. As the lawyer said, I mean, there are dreams that come true. I mean, we've managed to actually, have a few women in parliament, about 10, very rare in African countries. And today, I feel, that the fight of women is not just, as with Madame Bineta Diop, is not only on the African scale. I think this is, I think it's on the world scale. I mean, I think we're all concerned. We bring up children, and we also educate the men who are killing today. I mean, we made them. I mean, sorry for putting it that bluntly, but they come from our bowels. I had 7 children. I brought them up. I educated them, and I brought them up exactly in the same way, whether boys or girls. And and I think there's something very real today. And that is violence. I mean, these wars of religion where we say Islam is Christian. I mean, Chad in 1979 endured a north-south war between Muslims and Christians that left 40,000 dead. And we know full well in our families we have Christians, we have Muslims, and women are the first being impacted by this. And we know full well these are wars that have been scheduled. I mean, let's face up to reality. They've been scheduled because religion has never in such been a problem between people. And let me give the example of this young person who said his mother is from Switzerland and his father is from Chile. This is an example of a mix of people, and it's only women who can do that. And after this war that comes from every which side, I mean, in the Kurdistan, when we hear that women are actually taking up arms and going to fight. So why these wars? These are economic wars. I mean, again, let's face up to reality. Let's say the truth. And we can't say anything to this. And it's always these powers that come from outside that actually manipulate these people. I think the time has come. There's a time to stop this. I mean, Chad has endured since 1963, has endured wars. And so these are, again, these are wars that follow cycles. Do you want to finish with a question? Yes, I have a lot to say about Habare, what he did in Chad, but we don't have enough time. I'd just like to ask the following question to these women. Can we work, the women of the world, can we work together to live peace, Muslims and Christians? And again, in religion, it was never a problem. Let's stop with that. Enough. Let's quit it. And so again, this is an appeal I launch. Can we stop these wars? And let's stop saying Muslims against Christians. Enough, 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 as we heard it so often said in the film. Okay, I've taken the question. I've written it down. And there was another hand back at the back of the room. And we're going to have to leave the room. So I'm going to go straight to the question. So the women associations, do they have as important a role as they have in Africa or that they have in Morocco, where actually we were on a hike where they said these were the associations that would actually save the day. And there's a little valley of the Central Atlas. They had 5 or 6 associations. And so through links that I'm not going to talk more about, so we know of a French fighting for the independence of Morocco, or used to fight. So there. So okay, fine. So the question of the role of associations. So for the question of Mr. Somaroga on the role of women, those of us who are mothers, the role of education focused on nonviolence. Do you think this is, at the very heart of the issue? Okay. Okay. I mean, again, we're too polite. We tend to let the other one finish.
Thank you so much. I think it is a pretty important question, but I would like to say that it is not only the role of women educate men against violence. We need men in this equation. We need the example of men avoiding violence and educating their daughters and their kids in a different way. And I think women already have an important fight against violence. Women are already educating men and women against violence, as you can see and as we all see on the video. And it is happening in Africa, Latin America, Asia. I think it is happening around the world. And I think it is important to underline that men has to be responsible and proactive against violence.
Second question, truth and reconciliation. This notion of forgiving, and this comes from this process of truth and reconciliation, because to forgive, you have to go through this truth which allows to reconcile and to forgive. It's true in the majority of the cases, the women who are not in this war situation and in this peace situation, they say, we would like that you come and apologize a little bit for what happened. We have seen this in churches in South Africa after apartheid, just to come to this reconciliation, and it has been done in other countries as well. But what the women do presently, because the fact that their body is used as a weapon, that it is a strategy, it is a real strategy. This is the reason why women say, okay, we want to reconcile and we are going to forgive where necessary, and they reconcile, but at the same time, they think that justice has to be rendered so that you have a sustainable situation, so that the mistakes do not start again. So this goes together, those two processes. For the associations in Morocco, I think they are completely right. A state alone is not able to answer to the needs of a population. You have the private sector and civil society, but unfortunately, our states do not recognize the contribution of civil society. It's a find as this exchange, like in Europe, which shows that it is useful, and the civil society can bring a big contribution. We are not here just to fight against the states, but we have complementary roles. Not only the association coming from abroad, but also the local association must create a chain of solidarity so that the states can recognize the importance of civil society in our states. Thank you.
I believe this debate about peace and justice has been there forever. Yeah. We've always said that if we are able to reconcile and pardon, give pardon to those who've committed the crimes and move on. But what the lessons we've drawn from this is that as long as you are not also taking on board the justice element, this society can go back into conflict because there was no accountability. And I think with the setting up of the International Criminal Court, of course preceded by all these ad hoc courts, the message that was being sent was that, yes, we can negotiate for peace, but on the other hand, we can also hold people accountable for these crimes. So we should not continue believing that peace and justice cannot work together, because I believe that they can. I don't think that they are mutually exclusive, as we always tend to say that, okay, let's negotiate for peace first, and then later on maybe we will think about justice, or not at all. The lessons we've drawn from that in history is that it really has not worked. It hasn't worked. And in as much as we are ready to negotiate for peace, to pardon, etc., we must also be ready to see that there is some level of accountability in any given situation. I believe this is how we will be able to move forward instead of not pushing justice off the table and just wanting to negotiate for peace. But I agree with you, even as investigators and prosecutors, we are not insensitive to what others are doing, because the society needs everybody and everything to be put on the table. All avenues to be used to be able to achieve stability and security in any given society. So even in our work, respecting the fact that there are others with different mandates for negotiating for peace also, within the context of our Uganda investigations, for instance, we have charged 5 people whom we thought bear the greatest responsibility for the crimes, the top leaders of the Lord's Resistance Army. But at the same time, the office had gone out to encourage those who were still in the bush and to come out and take advantage of the amnesty that was being offered by Uganda government, so that they could at least use it as a way of rejoining their communities and be useful and constructive members of society, whereas we continue to insist that these 5 who bear the greatest responsibility for these crimes must be held accountable.
La dame du Tchad, juste pour dire que...
Lady in Chad, just to tell her that the organization African Women Solidarity supports on the field the MPs, women during elections, so that we have quotas and so that we can have this gender parity. We know that in Rwanda you have over 50% of women in the parliament. It's known. It's the first pays. My country, the Senegal, has over 40% women in the parliament. So in Africa, the 30% of Beijing are already reached. And so some countries are even further. In Chad, you have about 10 women MP, and you have to support the women during elections and also the women in the political parties. So we are going to wrap up on this positive sentence. Thank you for attending, and thank you to you three, the 3 of you.
And that is with respect to the role and responsibility of men in this fight. I do not think as women we should just think we go on our own to do this. I believe we should shoulder to shoulder work with men to achieve this advancement, because men also have a responsibility in this.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.